because activist judges are saying what? They don't want to secure our elections? Once again, how is this a partisan issue? This shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should be that any judge and any God-fearing individual that loves this country should want to make sure that our elections are secure. And we have created inside DHS the SAVE program that allows states to proactively look at their roles. And so when you have 278,000 individuals that are non-citizens registered to vote, plus 400,000 that have already been identified just in 23 states, what can we find? We have all 50 participating with us. We know, talking about our machines, we know for sure that our foreign adversaries, not our allies, foreign adversaries have parts that are vital pieces in our voting machines. We know that they can access what they consider the key to the back of these machines. We know that they can change voter registration and your vote. We know it's possible. There's not a question. It's not even for debate. One thing that I love about numbers and I love about facts is they don't lie. This isn't something that I'm trying to tell you to spin a narrative. This is what is going on. And what we are saying is that every state should partner with us to work to secure this. Once we identify the problem, everybody should be informed. Working with Secretary Lutnick, we are going to make our security enhancements mandatory, meaning that if these states want a grant and they want to be reimbursed to work or to run federal elections, they're going to have to implement security issues. Just security issues. We're not trying to get into anything else, but we're saying that the machines have to be secured and that your voter registration list needs to be scrubbed. We need to make sure that individuals that are legally able to vote are voting. We know that Iran hacked our state voter files and attempted to compromise, is the best word I can use, our systems where military members used to vote. So we're working with Secretary Hegseth and the DOW to safeguard those systems and protect our military voters. What's frustrating again in this is that the Biden administration knew this. And our intel community knew this. And not only did they withhold it from President Trump in his first term, but they withheld it, it looks like, President Biden in his term. They withheld this information from the public. They withheld it from Congress. That should never happen again, and because of President Trump's leadership, we're not allowing that to happen. We're telling the American people not to scare them, but to ensure them that we are watching it. We're taking it serious. We will secure our elections. Underneath President Trump's directive, he has gave Department of Homeland Security and myself the tools and the resources we need to secure the elections. But we have to have the states partner with us. If they choose not to, then the voters should hold them accountable. When I was sworn in just over 100 days ago by President Trump, and I can tell you honestly, I haven't quit smiling. I think this is the greatest job that I could possibly have. I said at that time that I'm going to fight for your yard and your backyard like I do mine, regardless if it's a blue state or it's a red state. Department of Homeland Security isn't just keeping you safe on your streets, but we're keeping our voters safe and our elections safe. But we can only do that if we have full participation. Right now, as I said, we only have 23 states participating with us. Out of just 4 blue states, to repeat that number, we found 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote. So for us, we're going to take proactive and reactive measures. At President Trump's direction, our cybersecurity team and CISA will release an updated election infrastructure plan, and it'll be public within 30 days, meaning that'll give the states the resources they need to help from the cyber side. From us, if they participate in the SAVE program, we'll provide the resources and training to support state election integrity. We're not trying to change the outcome. We're trying to make sure that American people can trust our voting system. Real ID does not prove citizenship and does not give you the right to vote. You must be a U.S. citizen and you must be eligible to vote. Before and after the election, we will scrub all election records looking for illegal aliens and those who are ineligible to vote, including those that somehow voted, yet they were deceased. If you're illegal and attempted to vote, or you tried to vote illegally for someone else, we will find you and we will charge you. Illegal voter registration and illegal voting both carry penalties up to 5 years in prison and up to $250,000 in fines. We will pursue maximum pressure on this. To let you know, we will be proactively looking at early voting, and then after post-election, we will continue to scrub all those that did vote. Those states that don't participate with us, they have public records of those that voted, which is where we found the 250,000 from the 4 states that don't participate with us. We will go through those records one by one, and we will pursue everybody. We will make sure that people know they can trust our elections. If states want the grant funding, to recap, they must secure the elections. I want to thank President Trump's proactive approach to this. He has put together a remarkable team that not only is informing the public about what's going on, but we're also informing Congress, we're informing our states, and we're going to secure our elections. States must be aware of the real threats for voter registration and the system breaches. And I do want to reemphasize the system breaches. Our machines are vulnerable. There are steps that can be made right now that can secure those. I would ask not just the public, but the media. That question should be asked of blue states, because we have red states participating with us. We have some red states that aren't. Every state that's not participating with us should be asked the hard question, why not? What are you afraid of? If they're not willing to do it, it should raise serious questions. It's not that hard. This isn't a partisan issue. So in conclusion, to recap, under President Trump's leadership, DHS is well prepared to support all states, red states, blue states, and local election officials ahead of the midterms. States must do their part to secure our election systems, and we stand by to help. If you are an illegal or you're voting illegally, we will hunt you down, we will find you, and we will prosecute you. The American people must have confidence in our elections. Election security is not a partisan issue, and Homeland Security, we're here to support everybody. The American people, the states, even the media, to get access and the information they need to hold the states accountable. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am. I think I like the Daily Caller better than the Daily Mail. I really don't like the Daily Mail. Yeah.
There's about 3 months until the midterm elections. I'm sure people are watching President Trump's speech last
First of all, great question. Thank you. When we start talking about can we ensure that the midterm elections are going to be secure? Yes, we absolutely can build confidence in the American people, but the states have to do their part. I will tell you, if the states that choose not to participate with the state program and they choose not to participate in securing the elections, we will make sure that we make those states a priority to look at who voted in their states and hold then the election officials accountable. If the election officials, once we gave them the information they need to secure their elections, and they chose not to, then those individuals can also be held accountable by fines, by penalties, and even, depending on how far it goes, prison time. Let me get the follow-up question, and I'll get to you guys. Hold on one second. Yes.
The president has mentioned that there were intelligence officials who covered this up and kept it from him, from President Biden. Do you have an estimate of how many intelligence officials were involved in this?
There's no question the intelligence community from the FBI, CIA, and even other places within DHS, not underneath President Trump's leadership, but that was underneath the Biden administration, kept it from President Trump and the American people in Congress. We are currently going through those lists. We will hold each one of them accountable. Some people aren't here. Some people are no longer in the agencies. Those that are, we will be held accountable. Those that abused their role in this will definitely be held accountable, because there is no excuse. If you purposely disobeyed the law and you purposely went around statute, then you have an accountability. You have a legal reason to be held accountable. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, I have not heard that at all, but we understand that it's being investigated, and we'll allow the investigation to go through. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Kara Castronova from...
I got back here in the back.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Today. Is there any analysis on what went wrong with CISA in 2020 and the premature analysis that it was the most safe and secure election? It's now being revealed that obviously it was not. Will Chris Krebs or anybody that was involved in that premature analysis be held accountable?
Everybody that purposely misled the American people, abused their power and their authority, and decided not to continue doing their job will be held accountable. What does that accountability look like? I don't know. Is it criminal? We'll pursue criminal charges. If it is not criminal, we'll make sure you never work for the federal government again, and you never have the ability to have a clearance again. Yes, right here. I will look this way next, I promise.
Some of your numbers, you have 278,000 non-citizens who on voter rolls. Any indication of how many people actually voted, or the 400,000 that are actually deceased? Any indication, total number of people that did vote, and what is your ballpark for how many of these people are actually voted?
So those that we've identified, the 278,000 non-citizens and the 400,000 deceased, we are now going through that record. We're standing up a department in DHS. Heather Honey, who is doing a great job exposing all this and working with the team together. Joe Edlow with USCIS and other teams. We are going through these files one by one. And one, identifying the individual. Two, did they vote? And three, where did they vote at? That's a hard, it's easy with states that participate. So the 28,000 that we identified with the 23 states that are working with us, that system can be very easily exposed, all 28,000. The problem is an activist judges now have put a hold on it, and so we're pending the case. Once it's turned back on, we'll be able to move fast. The 400,000 or the 250,000 in the just four of the blue states. Meaning, what were the states? So I got it right. California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Nevada. Those are going to be a little bit tougher because we're going to file paperwork for FOIA, even us, to try to get that information from the states. But we will. I don't care how long it takes. We will go by this one by one, and everybody that did vote illegally, we will prosecute. We'll bring up for prosecution. Yes?
Thank you, sir. Margaret, I have 2 questions for you.
By the way, it's very smart wearing a red dress because you catch everybody's eyes with my clothes. Same thing with a, what color shirt is that? Peach? Orange? I don't think that's orange. That's peach. That's definitely peach.
My first question for you is, given that left-wing lawmakers like CBS has already suggested that the president's entire speech last night was discredited, it seems likely that blue states will not participate in your efforts. So how do you plan to respond to that? And then on my second question, on the traffic stops, did the president know about that decision before you made it, and at what point did he learn about it?
Yeah, so let's talk about the major networks not willing to carry the President of the United States address to the nation on election security. How shameful is that? I think it was ABC, NBC, and I don't know if CBS, did CBS carry it? Anybody? CBS carried it? So ABC and NBC not carrying that, why? What are they trying to cover up? Why wouldn't they want to inform the American people? Why are they calling themselves a news outlet if they're not actually trying to put the news out there? We wasn't giving spin on the election. The president wasn't trying to relitigate what happened in 2020, although he definitely could at this point. The president was giving facts, what we have exposed, what the Biden administration covered up, what the intelligence community held from the American people, Congress, and the executive branch, and we're putting it out there. And yet, 2 major networks didn't want to cover it? I think the question really should say why. Because they sure covered the other part of it when they were saying that it was the most secure election ever. What facts did they have? Because they didn't have facts. They were taking someone's word for it. President Trump gave facts. Today we're giving facts. When you start talking about the president and I are very close. I was texting with him this morning. He and I are there's no daylight between us and the enforcement. And in fact, we have ramped up our enforcement and our arresting illegals. Just to give you some numbers on this so everybody knows, and I want to get them correct, so I brought them with me. Last year total in 2025, we deported, now these are not including self-deportations. These are just ones that we had to go through. We had to arrest, we had to go through the system, and we had to deport, and they tried to stay inside the country, and they had no legal status to do it. 442,637 total deported last year in 25. To date, well, these are yesterday's numbers. We have 403,294 that we've done in 2026. Our arrests are up. We're hitting single-day records every single day. But what we've done is I've turned down the temperature of the stove to try to get it correct without boiling over. We're trying to perfect our ability to work with local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and get illegals and criminals off our streets. 70% of the arrests we do daily are felons or have pending felony charges. 70%. We should all be able to work together with that. Total removals is 3 million. Total removals, 3 million. 1.4 total aliens have been, since we've been put in place, have either volunteered to be deported, yet we paid for them, or we forced them. But as I said, total removals have said, hey, we're leaving the country and did it on themselves was over 3 million. Yes.
I want to ask about foreign interference.
I'm sorry, who did you say you were?
CBS News.
Well, thank you for covering it last night.
Absolutely. I want to ask about foreign interference in our elections, but just first, since you mentioned turning down the temperature, what assurances can you give Americans that ICE officers will face consequences if they violate the DHS's use of force policy? And who will make that determination? And can you commit now to making that determination public?
Well, let me clarify. When I say turn down the temperature, when I turn down the temperature with you guys, we're turning up the heat on the streets. We're out there working harder than we ever have because we've empowered our law enforcement to do their job. What I'm trying to do is remove us from the headlines every single day. but everybody will be held accountable. I don't pick and choose which laws I'm going to enforce. I enforce our nation's laws. That means I'll enforce it with our own agency, and I'll enforce it with the criminals on the streets. That's my assurance. Yes. Go ahead. And I saw you stand up. I'll get to you next. Go ahead.
Could you speak more to how you're going to put pressure on the states to cooperate with you in this investigation?
Yeah.
In previous instances where we've had ICE already inquire about registrations, those have also happened in red states like Texas or North Carolina, where we've had HSI or Oklahoma making those requests. Could you talk about the scope of this investigation? It seems like it's more than actually police force.
So when we start talking about enforcing, first of all, the states to work with us and then the scope moving forward, I obviously can't force the states, but the states always look to us for reimbursement when it comes to helping with the elections. It's expensive to put on an election. I mean, you think about every precinct in every county and then statewide. We are not going to spend taxpayer dollars reimbursing a state that is refusing to secure their elections. And we're not saying do it alone. We're saying we're going to help you. We're going to give you the tools to need it. We're going to give you the training to need it. We're going to give you the funding to do it. We're going to expose the vulnerabilities, and all you have to do is use that information and the finances and the training we're going to give you to secure it. If you do it, we'll reimburse you. If you don't, we won't. Last question. Hold on, I'm getting the guy right there in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Neil W. McCabe, Real America's Voice. What are your former Republican Senate colleagues telling you? Are they in a mood to oust Majority Leader John Thune if he refuses to pass the Save America Act or can't figure out how to pass the Save America Act?
I haven't heard that at all from the Senate saying they're willing to vote John out. John is a good friend of mine. He's a good friend of most people in there. Now, there's a difference of opinion. I think the SAVE Act should be passed tomorrow. I think it should have already been passed. There's no excuse for it not being passed. However, he has a vote problem. There's a number. Leader Thune supports the SAVE Act. He voted for the SAVE Act when it came up during the vote-a-rama. Except everybody controls their own card. And even, I think the last time the vote came up, there was 49 that voted. Even if we did away with the filibuster, it still requires 51. So I know Leader Thune is working hard on that, but he's got a very, very difficult task ahead. Yes. Let me just get. I'm sorry. I told this guy with a paper I'd get to him, and then this is the last question. I have to go. I'm so sorry. Yes.
I'm just wondering if the officers involved in the Houston shooting as well as the Maine shooting, are they still on administrative leave? Is that how long?
Why any investigation that is going through? I don't care which law enforcement. I don't care if you're local PD, if you're county, if you're state, or if you're federal. When there's a shooting involved, standard practice is that individual goes on administrative leave while the investigation is going through, and we do it the same way. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right, you have been listening to DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin there speaking about what the administration is calling election integrity. Of course, this comes after President Trump's primetime address last night about the same topic. CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen is monitoring this for us in Washington, and he joins us right now. Jake, what were your takeaways from what you heard there?
Well, there are a couple of things. The main thing, Mugo, is asserting federal control or trying to coerce states through cutting back grant funding of getting access to their voter rolls in the name of, quote, election integrity. We should note that the Department of Justice and DHS have sued repeatedly through this administration. They filed about 30-plus lawsuits to get access to state voter rolls ahead of this announcement yesterday, going back to the early days of this administration. They've been trying to get access so that they can do this work preemptively, saying that they want to scrub non-citizens and potentially dead people out of state voter rolls. In 15 of those cases that have been decided so far, the Department of Justice has lost. There was one appellate panel of judges that also sided with states. There's simply no legal ground the Department of Justice has found yet to back up these lawsuits to get access to this, which presents kind of what we heard from Markwayne Mullin, DHS Secretary, today, saying that he was going to use the power of grants, working with the Treasury Department and other departments in the government to potentially cut back or cut funding from states that do not work with the federal government on this new initiative he announced today, which would be to kind of force states to purge their voter rolls. In Markwayne Mullin's words, it was to federally scrub them. It's very difficult to do this at the federal level because they don't have the same access or right to that information, and states know their localities better. And we should also note that what he's threatening to do is what judges have taken the most issue with, which is penalizing states, mostly in this case, in Markwayne Mullin's words, Democrat-led states. He pointed to New Jersey, California, Nevada, and others, alleging that 250,000 illegal immigrants were potentially on those voter rolls. Judges have simply left this up to the states to figure out. These states conduct elections all the time. They have control over their version of federal elections. Every state has different protocols for doing that. And as part of our fact check, going into even what we heard from President Trump last night, there simply is just not concrete evidence that if non-citizens are on these voter rolls, that they're actually then casting that vote. Sometimes, just in the words of one think tank, which does this work every day, it's usually arising from misunderstandings, mischaracterizations, or outright fabrications. Again, this is the next step that we've seen from the Department of Homeland Security to try to institute what President Trump called on last night. But we heard the same attacks on the media for not taking that speech. We also heard the same falsehoods that President Trump repeated last night, that there was some kind of meddling or interference, and it was up to the federal government to fix this problem or to force states to work with the federal government. We'll see how this plays out in the next couple of days and weeks, as most Democratic states, there are about 30 or so who have not worked with the federal government yet on this initiative, are likely to take issue with this and take this either to courts or rebuff this effort, and saying likely from their secretaries of states and governor's office that they have control over this situation, that elections are secure, election machines are secure, and the way that these states purge their voter rolls, which happens all the time when people die, people move out of their states or move locations, is secure.
Yeah, we'll see what comes next on that front. And Jake, you were part of the CBS News team fact-checking the president's speech last night. You mentioned that several times. What was true in that speech and what wasn't?
Well, there was a lot of misleading and false information. I just want to point you first to what President Trump said about the U.S. election system, quote, falling catastrophically short of the standard of cheating and interference. What President Trump said last night. Let's take a quick listen.
Every American deserves to know that when they cast their vote, that vote will be counted accurately in a system, and that is to make that system secure, one where cheating and interference are not just difficult, but virtually impossible. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard.
And this is really what we've heard from President Trump going back over 6 years now. We should note that officials have repeatedly said that election infrastructure is secure. CISA, the cybersecurity agency that's responsible for federal oversight of elections and election security to prevent foreign interference, has said both the 2024 and 2020 presidential elections were not just secure, but had, quote, no evidence of malicious activity. Also, every state conducts audits of their elections after they're conducted. Some are required by law, and specifically after the 2020 election, many opened up independent audits. Neither of those situations in any state, whether it was a battleground state where President Trump and his legal team sued, or any other institution, found any evidence that would have changed the election results in 2020. Mugo, we should also just kind of point out another falsehood that President Trump said last night, which was exaggerated when he claimed that hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are active on voter rolls, like Markwayne Mullin just echoed. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls.
And the Center for Election Innovation and Research said that non-citizen voting in U.S. elections, quote, arise from misunderstandings, mischaracterizations, or outright fabrications. And once an investigation by an individual state secretary of state is concluded, the number of alleged instances falls dramatically. I can have a number of states in front of me, but usually when they find non-citizens who have registered to vote, they purge them out or investigate why. And every state, thinking about Colorado, Kansas, New York, Michigan, and Iowa, all states that are not necessarily even battleground states in any election, past or future have said that these instances of people actually registering to vote does not result in people actually illegally voting or going to the polls. And usually that number, in one case, I'll just point out to you, Mugo, Iowa in 2025 found that there were 2,000 non-citizens registered to vote. Of people who had actually voted, it was only 35 people in the 2024 election. That's out of an entire statewide population of people. And then typically at the local level, people are prosecuted and those votes are not counted. Back to you, Mugo.
An important context to have there, Jake Rosen. Thank you so much. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Anthony, thank you for your time. So to what extent do you think Americans think voter fraud is a big issue that's facing the country right now?
Hey there, Muga, and that's the right question because we want to look at the larger context here. We've been following this in polling for years, and especially since 2020. The bottom line is that the majority of Americans think that voter fraud, if it occurs, is in isolated incidents and not necessarily widespread. But there's a second beat to that, and that is the inescapable differences that we've seen among partisans, which is to say, the Republicans, the president's base, has been much more receptive to what you might say his allegations, his claims that there are more widespread instances of fraud. In fact, much of this has happened since 2020. And if I show you the graphic that I think is coming up on your screen, you're going to see this difference between the large number, overwhelming number of Republicans who, after 2024, thought, as Americans did, that Donald Trump was the legitimate winner of the 24 election. But compare that to after 2020, when just under a quarter of Republicans felt that Joe Biden had been the legitimate winner. And in fact, they continued to express that view throughout Joe Biden's presidency. So again, very much on the Republican base here, these views, and also very much still stemming out of 2020, Mugo.
And Anthony, I'm not sure if you just touched on that because this seems very similar to my next question for you, but when it all comes down to it, what do most Americans actually believe happened in the 2020 election, and what are you watching for right now?
Well, you can unpack that a little bit more in this sense. One is you look at some of the elements that the president has stressed. Mail balloting in particular, and again, you see partisan differences where more likely Republicans say that there is fraud in mail balloting specifically as opposed to in person. There is, however, and if I get away from the partisan differences for a minute, there is the widespread view that there ought to be voter ID. Now, there's other specifics in the SAVE Act that, might complicate that. But in terms of broad opinion, you do see support for that. Having said that, Mugo, as you look forward then to 2026, to the midterms here, you see some, but not necessarily very, amounts of confidence in the idea that people's votes will be counted correctly, and that is shared by Democrats and Republicans, but I should point out for different reasons. For Republicans, it's the elements that I just talked about, the suspicion of widespread fraud. For Democrats, it's often about ballot access and the concerns on their part that they won't be able, whether it's by mail ballot or access to a ballot, be able to complete the process. So that word fraud there has a lot of different meanings depending on who you talk to, and that is the larger context, Mugo.
Anthony Salvanto, you always help us really see the big picture with those numbers. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And there is much more ahead on CBS News 24/7. The latest from Texas as floodwaters move through central Texas. We're on the ground in Kerrville. And we are watching air quality levels as pollution from Canadian wildfires sweeps across parts of the U.S. And the U.K. is getting its 7th prime minister in just 10 years, a new person taking the reins. I'm Mugo Odigwe. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We'll be right back.
I want to know what's going on in the world. You can't do that if you're just sitting in a chair, reading about what other people have found. You have to get out there and listen. By telling people about each other, you actually bring this country together. There are big questions that all of us are asking. I want to get you the answers. I'm Tony DeCopel. Join me on the CBS Evening News.
Who's our victim?
33 years old, naval intelligence officer.
Looks like there's a story there.
Oh, wow, that's really nice silk.
How about I just give you guys the highlights?
Federal agents!
Everyone down!
The robbery and the murder are connected.
Genius, McGee. Elite. Very elite.
NCIS is all new CBS Tuesday, 8/7 Central, and streaming on Paramount+.